I'm Roman Vladimirsky. Brian Weir is half the man he used to be, thankfully. All right, we're back with another episode of the TVT News Podcast, and today I have a super special guest with me, my man Anthony Donahue, who is what they call a Knicks super fan. Let me ask you a question, though. Are you a bigger fan than Spike Lee?
First off, Roman, what's going on? Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. I never like to say I'm a bigger fan than Spike Lee. That's just not fair. Spike Lee's much older than me. He's been around way longer. But it's no competition. So I'll let the other people decide that. You know what I'm saying? And Spike I'm pretty cool with. He used to come on my show back in the day when I was doing the Knicks radio show. So I'm not going to say I'm bigger than Spike. That'd be unfair.
Okay, so you're
But if somebody wants to, they can. But I'm not going to say that. Out of respect for the legendary Spike Lee.
He is a legend in his own right.
Absolutely.
So tell us, how did you come to where you are today? Like, where did this all start? Because you are kind of, I think, living a lot of fans' dreams, right?
Yeah.
You know, like everybody who is a fan of whether it's the Knicks, the Yankees, the Mets, whatever it is, everybody wants to be in with the team. Everybody wants to be buddies with the players, the executives, management. Like, you're very special, and you know, I'm a fan of the Knicks. I'm a huge fan, and I would fucking love to just walk right into the Garden and you know, just put my feet back and watch a game. So how did that happen for you?
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the kind words. So I've been a diehard Knicks fan since I was 8 years old. That's when I really got into it. During the 1993 playoffs, the Knicks were playing the Pacers in the first round. I was a Yankees fan, a Giants fan, and a Rangers fan before the Knicks. And when I started watching the Knicks in those playoffs in 1993 when I was 8 years old, 9 years old in fourth grade, something just took over my whole body, spirit, and I became obsessed. Bored obsessed. And I went to my first game, April 2nd, 1994, when the Knicks were playing the Miami Heat. One of the best days of my life. Yeah. As far as how I got to where I got to, obviously became obsessed. Watched every game from fourth grade till senior year of high school. I'd say in high school I started going a lot more. I was going about 10 games a year. I was living 3 hours away in upstate New York in the Catskills in a small town called Walton. I moved up there after third grade from the Bronx. But then, so when I was 20 years old, I got an internship with ESPN Radio. And how I got that is a crazy story, too.
Wait, ESPN local radio?
Yeah, it was 1050 at the time, now 98.7.
So did you know that I entered at 98.7?
I did not.
See? Look at that. We're breaking news right here. So I entered at 98.7 in 2000, I think it was 11 or 12.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So it wasn't 98.7 yet?
They
Still
were just...
Yeah.
So I was there when they launched the FM dial.
What?
Swear to God.
So you work with Donnie and Michael and them?
Don, Michael.
Those are my guys.
So I was in the marketing... marketing and promotions, and then obviously as an intern you do both. But then I started working for marketing and promotions.
That's wild.
Who's the marketing guy
when I was there? The marketing guy, I think he works there still. He's in traffic. Steve Hart.
Steve Hart is still there.
He is a character.
He's a legend.
Don't know what he does. He's the so you can make a case. You can make a strong case. I can't believe I'm about to say what I'm about to say it. Steve Hart is the reason where I am today.
Really?
Yes. He's one of them.
Tell me more.
I might not be in this seat talking to you about my Knicks fandom getting so big and without Steve Hart. So,
okay,
I guess we'll start the intern story.
Let's do it.
Which will lead into how I got in with the Knicks. So, when I was 20 years old, I was working for the New York City Board of Elections.
Okay.
I didn't do well in school. I didn't even get a real high school diploma. I got an IEP diploma. Okay. I couldn't even go to college. Like, I got 2 credits in high school total, a half a credit each year for gym. I was in resource rooms, special head, all this stuff. So I knew from like 14 years old and on, my uncle, who was working for the Board of Elections, said to my grandparents raised me. They said, "Don't worry, I'll get Anthony a job with me after high school." Sure enough, I got like a fake diploma, and I started working for the New York City Board of Elections in July of 2001, 2 months before 9/11, working at 42 Broadway in Lower Manhattan.
Oof.
Yeah, ran from the building falling, was messed up for years after that too. Yeah, a lot of stuff there too.
Holy shit.
I'm working at the New York City Board of Elections, and I thought that was going to be my life. I was going to work there till 65, 70 years old, you know, get a pension. And there was people that work for the board, and I'm not knocking them. Like when I started working there when I was 17, I knew a lot of those folks there when I was 10 years old visiting, and some of those folks are still working there now. Like that's okay. That's their life. They started a city job at 23 years old, and they're gonna leave at 70. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
And I thought that was gonna be my life. All I wanted was to make a couple bucks.
But it wasn't for you.
Have enough money to pay my bills and go to Knicks games. That's all I cared about. But by the time I got to about 19, 20 years old, going through the stuff with 9/11, going back to Lower Manhattan every day after that, I didn't want that anymore. So I heard an ad on the radio for the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and to come for a tryout.
I know those ads.
So I went to the tryout, and I did a audition, and they called me a few days later, said I made it. Looking back, and this isn't a knock on the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, I'm sure they accept almost everybody.
Yeah.
But they made it like I was like really good. Like, we see a lot of potential in you. We want you to come into the school. So the schools that, like, at the time, I don't know how
you're
it is
the next
now.
John Sterling.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I definitely was not. And I definitely wasn't as polished as I am now as far as speaking and things like that. But everybody gets better at their craft. So I go to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. It's a 16-week program. So I do it. And their thing is like, don't plan on being on the air. Like, plan on working behind the scenes. But my thing was I wanted to be on the air. So I did the 16-week program, graduated from the school. And now it's like a week after I graduated, I'm going to a Yankees playoff game. Game 1, Yankees-Twins. I think it was Johan Santana versus Kevin Brown. I finished the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and my thing was, hey, at least I can say I tried. I'll work at the Board of Elections for the next 50 years. I tried.
Sure.
Fuck it. I tried.
Yeah.
So I'm walking. I get to the corner of 161st and River. I can go straight to Yankee Stadium, the old one. I could make a right and go towards like the dugout. I don't know if the dugout was even opening it that way, but I make a left. And now outside Stan Sports Bar is Wally Matthews, who used to write for The Post, who was on ESPN Radio for a while, Tom Keegan, and Steve Hart. And I see all three of them. I didn't know
Steve Hart had a lot of hair back then.
Yeah, he did.
He did.
And I didn't know who Steve Hart was, of course. So I went up to Wally and said, hey, Wally, I'm a big fan. I've been watching you when you were on Fox Sports back in the 90s. And I remember watching you with Jim Rome, and I read your articles in the New York Post. And, of course, I've been listening to you on ESPN Radio the last few years. Big fan. And then I turned to Steve Hart and Wally, and I was like, hey, like, do you guys need interns? And they both were like, call this guy, Aaron Spielberg, who was the executive producer.
Heard of his name. I never actually met him,
Yeah, who was the executive producer at the time. Say you met us. See how it goes. So they gave me his direct line. So I call him the next day. I'm like, hey, it's Anthony Donahue. I met Wally Matthews and Steve Hart last night outside stands, and I'd love to have an internship. So I shoot over my resume. I got nothing on my resume. I had the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, Board of Elections, then I delivered newspapers in upstate New York. Now, ESPN Radio, they're getting resumes from Fordham and Syracuse and, really big colleges. Sure. So they just looked at my resume and said, have a nice day. I called this dude for a month straight, begging for an interview. Every day.
Good for you.
Every day.
That's hustle.
It was 2004. I wasn't even 21. I was 20. I had nothing to lose. I kept calling him until he said no. But finally he said, all right, come in for an interview. So I come in for an interview. I have a resume that's typed up, whatever. And he's looking at it. He's just like, what can you do? And I was like, whatever you want. And I remember Michael Kay walked by. I said to Aaron, I'm like, that's Michael Kay. He's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, I just want to work here, man. I don't care. I just want to work here. And he was like, all right, I'll let you know in a week.
Yeah.
And as I'm about to get up in his office, I said, why can't you just let me know now? Like, I just want to start. Yeah. He's like, you're really hungry, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, start next week. And at this point in my life, I never accomplished anything. Think about it. Oh, and also, here's a big kicker of the story. He goes, you'll be getting college credits, right? And I was like, of course.
Oh, shit, but you weren't in college.
No, not at all. So he's like,
what'd you do?
Just said I was getting college credits, but they didn't give me any paperwork or anything. So he's like, can you start Monday? I'm like, sure. So imagine.
Shout out to the company.
Yeah, going through special ed, no real high school diploma, going through a trade school. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're about to start interning at ESPN Radio. I start my first month there. I did okay. I screened the phone.
And you were strictly in the
production.
Room, in production.
Yeah, strictly.
See, when I was there, we had to do both.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, I would help with the marketing team a little bit here and there, but it was strictly production. And the first month I did an average job, and then all of a sudden, I was working. Now it probably was illegal on their part. I was working 70 hours a week as an intern. They would use me to screen calls.
Totally illegal.
They would use me to screen calls for the morning show, which at the the midday show, the night show. Sometimes you'd have Brandon Tierney or Gordon Damer, Larry Hardesty hosting the shows at night. I would be working 70 hours a week, but it was amazing. And then finally, by June of 2005, they hired me. But a few weeks before that, I remember they were
Board
like,
op?
no, I didn't know I could. They wanted me to do board up. I didn't know. I couldn't do it. I just did producer, I screen calls, book guests. I would go to events with the microphone, things like that.
Dude, so you're in now.
Yeah.
You're in.
And then at some point around Yankees opening day 2005, I remember we were doing an event in one of the parking lots, like super far from the stadium. And somebody said to me, I think it was Aaron, and he was like, when do you go to school? I was like, yeah, about that.
But you're hired already, so it doesn't matter.
Well, no, this is before I got hired, actually. So I missed.
Okay.
I was just like, yeah, I don't go to school, and they all just loved me so much. He was like, wow, like I respect that. And then within a few weeks later, I got hired, and by June 2005, I was getting paychecks from ESPN Radio.
Because theoretically,
yeah,
if you were interning without,
well, I think we were both wrong.
For them, they would have been fucked.
Well, I think we were both wrong, probably, right? Yeah. So they had me working literally 70 hours. And listen, I'm 21 years old now, living with my grandmother. She was like, Anthony, just, I quit the Board of Elections in February of 2005. And because they told me they may hire me back in like February. So I couldn't do both. So
you're hired, and how long were you? How long
4 years, were you there? Till 2008.
2008.
And then a lot of people got laid off after then. And then, but like I did a lot of on-air stuff for them between 2014 and 2017. I would go in once a week for like Knicks interviews and stuff. I would be on with my man Bill Daughtry and all those guys.
Radio legend.
The radio legend Bill Daughtry is a great friend of mine. Yeah. Great friend of mine.
He's a good dude.
He is. He's the best. So ESPN Radio is a very special place in my heart. So working at Penn Plaza, ESPN's on 17. The Knicks are on like 12 to 15.
So you're close, man.
I got being there every day. I got cool with everybody, with the Garden, with the Knicks, and I was going to every game too. And that's how I built my relationship with the New York Knicks organization. And I was producing the pre- and post-game shows in 2005 and 2006 with Brandon Tierney. So that was awesome. So I got to go into the games early. I got to be there after the game. I got to meet so many people and build relationships, from people like Walt Frazier to Earl Monroe to all the current players, guys I'm still cool with today. Quentin Richardson and David Lee, Wilson Chandler, Nate Robinson. I mean, the list goes on, So that's how I built my relationship in a short version with the New York Knicks organization.
And I think it's that's kudos to you, because there's so many kids out there that they start internships, whether it's at the Garden or the Knicks or any company. You got to take advantage of that time that you're there.
I did.
Because it can be over like this. A semester goes really quick for those in college. A semester goes really fucking quick, and if you don't take advantage of the time that you have there, what the hell are you doing there in the first place, dude? So that's fucking awesome, man.
It's so crazy. And like I still have a good relationship with them today. I was on the Michael Kay show as a guest back in April. I was on with Kay, Donnie, and Peter talking about my trip to Cleveland. And those guys they shouted me out the other day.
Yep.
And that's how I got the famous nickname Tony Rice Balls. Like Wally Matthews gave that to me. Like when I was on the Michael Kay show back in April, they were like, what's up, Rice Balls? So ESPN Radio is a very special place in my heart.
Yeah. So when I was there, they were at Penn for like 3 months, and then we moved to West End Avenue.
Oh, so interesting. Yeah. So I was there. I was at so when I worked there from 04 to 08, it was only Penn, and then when I did the on-air stuff from 14 to 17, was over at West End Avenue.
That's wild.
So my man like Ray Santiago,
RJ Santillo, all those guys. I still talk to them a lot. I was at the studio like last week. I had lunch with Ryan Hurley, and then he just took me up because I know he's not there anymore.
Really?
And we went up just to go see the new studio.
So Ryan's probably a big reason where I'm at in my life today too, from like things back in the day.
Ryan's a man.
Ryan's not there anymore.
He's a good dude. He's not. No, they got laid off like 6 months ago or so.
Winthrop too?
No, he's still there. I saw him, but he's still there.
Wow. Yeah. So I work very closely with Ryan Hurley, John Winthrop,
dudes,
Michael Kay, Don LaGreca, Joey Salvia.
Joey I never met.
Yeah, I work with Joey.
So you see what a small
Stephen
world, man.
We
didn't even know we had that connection.
I was helping produce the first Stephen A. Smith radio show there in 2005. Dude. So I was there and I was like Brandon Tierney's like right-hand man. Like I would go everywhere at BT.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome, man.
So ESPN Radio was a very, very major part of my life. And I don't know, some of my friends say I would have figured it out anyway. But if I didn't meet Wally and Steve Hart that day by stands, I don't want to say this because I'm not a negative person. if I don't meet those guys that day outside stands, there's a chance I'm working on voting machines today. There's a chance.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
See,
because,
I know, but I think.
But I heard when you were talking about the voting machines before, and you were bored just talking about it.
I was.
So there's no fucking way you would have just still been.
I know, but like
maybe you wouldn't have been doing this, but there's no way you would have still
but
been doing
meeting
voting
them
machines.
that day, like there's certain moments in life that are important, but there's certain moments in life that are life changing. Meeting those guys that day outside stands in 2004 was life changing.
Yeah.
And you're right. Maybe I eventually started Nick's show but like because I was working with ESPN Radio, I was getting in with everybody. So like, that's how I met John Starks for the first time. That's how the first ever radio show I did was in 2005, where I paid for airtime in Deer Park, Long Island. And my first guest I ever had was John Starks because I met him going to work one day at ESPN Radio. So yes, I probably would have figured it out eventually, but meeting those guys in front of Stan Sports Bar that day was absolutely life-changing.
Dude, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we didn't make that connection before.
That's wild.
That's crazy.
I see Ray almost every Knick game, And,
I don't go anymore as often.
And all those guys, knew my sister too. So it's a very, very special place.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to segue into that.
Yeah, sure.
Because your journey with your sister is a big
yeah.
part of where you are today and who you are and who you've become and your relationship with the Knicks and how they supported you. So tell us a little bit about that. I know it's kind of, some people think it's self-explanatory, right? Your little sister gets diagnosed with such a bad disease. How does that affect you, not just as a brother, but as a person in your life?
Yeah, no, of course. So I think my relationship with my little sister was truly, I think, 1 in a million. Her dad left her when she was about 1.5 years old. Excuse me. We're 15 years apart.
Yeah.
And our mother had a lot of, drug issues and stuff.
Sure.
And so I had to take care of her. There was other help too from my aunt, my uncle, but I was her primary caretaker. And it was awesome. Like she was 5 years old. I was 20. I was bringing her to her first day of kindergarten at,
So you were dad.
I was, but I guess I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
Until later on, bringing her to her first day of kindergarten at PS 108. And, picking her up from school every day, dropping her off. And if I couldn't pick her up, I arranged to have her picked up. And then all of a sudden, when she was 10 years old, she gets diagnosed with her first cancer. I was 26. She was 10, about to be 11. And all of a sudden, I went from you're 26, you're going out all the time, you're having fun. And all of a sudden, I was supposed to have a summer of going out and having fun. And all of a sudden, you're living in the hospital and you're in meetings with doctors. And they're using words that you can't even pronounce or spell.
Yeah.
And, my mom wasn't around. She was in a home. Her dad is in Texas doing, never even reached out.
So this is a lot of responsibility on the weight of a 26-year-old.
It was, but when you love someone so much, you don't care.
No.
I never once was like, of course, I said this sucks because you don't want to see your sister have brain cancer.
Not, yeah.
But as far as doing the work that being there every day, I never once complained about it, ever, because you had to do it. And the first cancer, I stayed the night there every night. She was basically inpatient off and on for 2 straight years. I would leave the hospital and go to the Knicks game still, do what I had to do. Always come right back after the games, and then after tons of chemo, radiation, multiple surgeries, multiple brain surgeries. In February 2012, they said she was cancer-free. And that was...
How did that feel?
Man, it was one of the best moments of my life. Every February 13th for the next 7 years, we did something really cool. That was a very, very special day. I remember that day in 2012. We were at one of our routine checkups that we had at that time once a month. And Dr. Garvin was basically like, I think it's gone. We're cancer-free. And there was still a lot of work after that. You still had checkups once a month. Then as the years went on, maybe an MRI instead of every 3 months, it'd be every 6 months. But the thing is, if she sneezed the wrong way, you had to call her to the hospital. She sneezed wrong, we'll bring her in for an MRI because she was so delicate.
But at this point, you're probably scarred too. I don't know what.
Of course.
So
any little thing that happens, you get nervous because she's not like us or probably fairly healthy. So the next 7 years were still tough, but we did it. We did what we had to do, and then of course, everything changed forever in October of 2019.
Yeah,
when she had the stroke. She everything was going really good. She was about to start her second year of college. You know, she graduated high school. She went through a year Bronx community. She wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do yet, but ironically, I think she was a great cook. She could make anything. She could follow a recipe, and she was actually really starting to take advice from our friend Sal. She would text Sal and, you know, ask him cooking advice. She'd go to 808 Social. She'd go to the bistro, go to the kitchen. Sal would give her advice. So she was really starting to
Sal Kakula.
Yeah, absolutely. She was really starting to think to go to culinary school because she wasn't doing great at college. And I'm like, gee, don't just go to college to go to college. Like, you're great at cooking. And then the morning of Monday, October 14th, we went to bed the night before. The Yankees were playing a playoff game versus the Astros, lost in extra innings, and I knocked out. Excuse me. I knocked out, and she woke me up in the middle of the night, and she was like, she walked to my bedroom, and she was like, you know, I feel funny. And I was like, okay, that's what do you mean? She's like, I don't know, I just feel funny. I was like, all right, well, do you need to go to the ER? She's like, I don't think so. She's like, maybe urgent care. And I said, well, I don't think urgent care is open in the middle of the night. If you want to go in the morning, like, I got you. I'm like, go back to bed. And she goes back to bed. Then about 30 minutes, an hour later, my phone's ringing. I'm like, what the fuck? I look, and it's G in the next room. I'm like, I just jump out of bed. I'm like, well, why are you calling me? She's like, I can't get out of bed. I'm like, get up. I'm like, get up. She's like, I can't. And then she was starting to slur her words, and I'm like, I watched my grandmother have a stroke when I was a kid, but my grandmother was 100 years old. Like, that makes sense. Not that it's good, but I'm saying, like, you know, an older person have a stroke. Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck? So I called 911 right away. They got there, and sure enough, they're like, you know, she was having a stroke, and we rushed her right to the hospital. I was in NYP, where we always went. I felt like there was 100 doctors in the room. They pulled me out, and you know, I was hysterical, and they said, you know, we have to do brain surgery. And I was like, okay, like, next week? And they're like, no, now. You have to sign paperwork. Like, we have to do it now. Like, and they saved her life that morning. You know, she woke up a few days later. The whole left side of her body was paralyzed. 20 years old. 20 years old. This kid never hurt a fly. She never did anything wrong. And then, so we're like, all right, so, you know, we'll do what we have to do. We'll conquer this. But the problem is 20-year-olds don't just have strokes randomly. So they had to do an MRI in her brain over the next 2 weeks. And sure enough, when the swelling went down from the brain surgery, they did the MRI, and they found brain cancer again. So we thought it was going to be the same cancer as 2010. And not that that was great. I mean, that cancer, I think she had a 30% chance to beat, and she did. When they found the new cancer, it was a different cancer, even though it was in her brain, which is actually very rare, which is why I donated her brain to science, because it's very rare, to get two different cancers in the same spot, apparently. I'm just relaying what doctors have said to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so she had a new cancer in her brain called glioblastoma, which is like nobody's ever beat it. Some have just lived longer. And, you know, they told us flat out, like, she had about 9 months to live. And she still wanted to fight it, though. She still fought it. She did physical therapy to try to walk again. She did chemo. She did radiation. There was a point in December of 2019 where she was doing physical therapy to walk again. She was doing chemo, and she was doing radiation. You know how much she complained? 0. Other than basic stuff like, Aunt, my head hurts. You get me some Tylenol? Right. Like, she couldn't walk. She was 20. Still brought her some Knicks games. We still went out to eat when we could, you know, when she wasn't an inpatient. And she never complained. And, of course, she got really, really bad by the summer. And then, you know, she passed away on August 29, 2020. I read
an article that said that she was fighting for you.
Absolutely, yeah. She
And you told her not to fight anymore?
Yeah. So even the last 3 months, she was so sick. She couldn't even feel going to the bathroom. Like, the last 3 months of her life, she didn't get out of bed once. But every day at the hospital, I'll be like, let's go. We got this. And she'd be like, yeah. But, like, she knew she didn't have it, you know. And a friend of mine around July, because we knew the ending was coming, one of my best friends was like, it's okay to tell her to stop fighting if you're ready. But I'd still, every day, we got this, G.
It's not an easy thing to do.
Right. And then one night, I said, I need you to stop fighting. It's okay. Stop. stop. And then literally, it's like she needed me to say that. And then like 4 or 5 hours later, I left the room for 10 minutes, and that's when she passed. And she didn't pass in front of me. And at first, I was a little mad at her. Like I was like,
she wasn't going to do that.
I'm supposed to be holding your hand for this. And then one of the nurses who I've known for like 15 years who works there was like, Anthony, she was never going to die in front of you, And that made me feel really good. And but she never complained once. Imagine, nobody wants to not be able to walk and have cancer, but imagine having that at 20.
Yeah.
It's not even like she was 85. It's all right, like it sucks, but hey, I lived in a long-ass life. And she didn't complain. You know what made her happy even in the last days? Bringing her some pizza suprema and some chopped up supersod. That's serious. That's serious. That's serious. Bringing some pizza, some chopped up supersod, maybe some General Tso's chicken, and some whack ass pink lemonade from like Starbucks. Yeah. Like she never complained. She'd just be like, "Yo, what can you get me for dinner?" And I almost find it like weird at times. Like, but that was her. She was really a special individual. She was like
it's
no
inspiring.
other.
It's inspiring.
And like she even told me when she was not as bad as far as the brain cancer like really affecting her. She said she was fighting for other people. She was fighting to let you know it's okay. Like it's gonna be okay. And one of my favorite stories from that year of being sick was a few weeks after the stroke, she couldn't walk. Like she could walk a tiny bit. And she was like, she said it. She goes, the first Knicks game we go to when I'm out of the hospital, I'm gonna walk on center court. I was like, all right. And then she was inpatient the first 6 weeks. And then the next 2 months, she actually lived at the New Rochelle rehab center, and she was outpatient. So, she lived there, but we can leave.
Right.
Leave is what I'm saying. So, finally, we went to a Knicks game early December 2019 versus Boston. And then I have no video of this because I was so freaking scared. But I had a few friends that were there that watched it. After the game, we wheeled her out to the three-point line. And she had a cane, and I have a picture, but like I said, I don't have a video because I was just so scared. And from the three-point line, she got out of her wheelchair and a cane, and she walked to center court.
That's amazing, man.
And I know she did that for me. She didn't. I know she didn't do that for her. She did that for me. And she walked to center court.
Sports has the ability to really. It's more than just a game, right? It brings people together in moments like this.
Yeah.
And let's back up a little bit, and I really want to touch on this. I think it's important. # win for Gianna.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that an entire organization, and I think even beyond just the organization, came together like that for your sister.
Yeah. And this is
How
back
did
on
that make
social
you feel?
media. Oh, it made me feel amazing.
The hashtag thing was new.
Yeah, because
It
Twitter was
wasn't-
still pretty new.
yeah,
It started in
yeah.
2011.
Yeah.
So Twitter was still fairly new. There wasn't even Instagram yet. Or if it was, we weren't using it yet.
Right.
Yeah, it was amazing, man. You had people from all over the world like that weren't even Knicks fans. They'd be like, I want the Knicks to win for, this kid.
That's
and
amazing.
It was incredible.
That's like the power of fucking sports, man.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
For people that say it's just a game, like it goes beyond that. It really touches
so
people's
what's funny about
hearts.
the win for Gianna streak was at the time the Knicks weren't playing good at all in March of 2011. They are on like a 3
Well,
or
let's
4
be honest. There's not that many times
Yeah, I know. There's
in
not.
the last
Well,
20
that's
years
why
when
the
Knicks
story
been
is
playing
actually
good.
more incredible.
Yeah.
So it's like March 2011. The Knicks are like 2 games out of the playoffs, somewhere around there. I have to look at the exact numbers. And we started the hashtag win for Gianna on a Monday night versus Orlando. Because the Knicks, like I said, we had lost like 3 or 4 in a row. And all of a sudden, the Knicks win the next 7 games with the hashtag. And at the time, it was only, I think, the second time in 12 years the Knicks had a winning streak over 5 games. Literally. That's a fact.
And this was, you said, what year?
2011.
2011.
End of the season.
Okay.
And we won 7 straight games. Ended up getting swept in the playoffs, unfortunately. But we won 7 straight games, and that made the hashtag get even bigger because you have this, the Knicks aren't, unfortunately, like the Bulls or the Lakers of the back in the day. Or like all of a sudden this hashtag starts, and we win 7 straight games. It was wild.
That's amazing.
And my sister at the time during that stretch was living in Boston, and I was going back and forth because she was doing radiation there. So the journey's been really incredible.
Dude,
From
this
New York Presbyterian to Boston to just a lot. It's been a lot.
That's amazing, man. I think you and your family entire story is really
Thank
amazing. It's the American dream for sports fans at the very least. and I appreciate you sharing it.
No, of course. Thank you for letting me share it.
Dude, absolutely, man. Anytime. And I feel like we can go on about this for hours.
Yeah, no, of course. Of course. There's always.
So before I let you go, two more questions.
Yeah. You lighten the mood a little bit?
Yeah.
You ask me like top 5 favorite restaurants or something?
No, man. I just want to know. I just want to know, as a long-suffering Knicks fan such as yourself,
yeah.
Are we ever going to see some kind of hardware?
I hope so. It's now
at least an NBA final. Like last year, I was excited because I'm like, you know what? We're going to beat the fucking Heat.
I thought
we're going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals.
And
we're not going to win, but that's great.
So my thing was we played so well versus Boston last year.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought we had their number, but Miami was just too good in that second round. Listen,
but they shouldn't have been
I think we're on the right track, and it takes some luck and maybe another draft pick or another trade.
How do you feel about Joel Embiid?
I think he's a great player. I don't see the Sixers trading him to the Knicks. I could be wrong.
I don't want him.
Not that I don't want him. I just don't see it happening. So I'm not gonna. And I've been down this road. I learned so many lessons from the LeBron days of like, oh, LeBron's coming in 2010.
Yeah, he's not coming.
Or Dwayne Wade's coming. Or in 2019, Kevin Durant's coming. Like I just focus on what we have, and we're on the right track. But we definitely need some more help, and hopefully we'll get it.
I like that. All right, final question.
Yeah.
If you can go back and speak to a younger Anthony Donahue, and you can give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
It's interesting because if the advice I'd probably give would take away from my story, though. Take things more serious. Like, I took a lot of things as jokes when I was a kid. Like, for example, I always loved basketball, and I was always super good. But I started drinking a lot when I was 14. Like, I don't drink now really at all. But I was up in Walton, New York, partying like a crazy kid. And, like, I started drinking a lot and partying and not taking care of myself. And then at 16, I started running cross country, lost a bunch of weight, and I was a really good runner, which helped my basketball skills. Like, just taking things more serious. But then again, I wouldn't have the same story then. So I guess I wouldn't change much. But that would be something I would say.
But once you found something you love,
right,
in my man Steve Hart, you started taking it seriously and you were killing it.
That's crazy. Yep.
I think the one thing we could take from this is shout out to Steve Hart.
Yes. And he'll love this because I've told this story before. And I've just mentioned Wally's name, and then I'll post the video or the audio clip, and Steve will hit me up, like, Anthony, because my thought process was probably like, if I say Steve Hart, I'm not knocking Steve Hart here. Nobody knows who Steve Hart is.
He's behind the scenes guy.
Behind the scenes guy.
Yeah.
So when I've told the story to other podcasts, I've told the same exact story, but I've kind of just said Wally Matthews and a production and a marketing guy because they might not have just known who Steve was. So Steve Hart and Wally Matthews. I met outside Stan Sports Bar.
Shout out to Steve Hart.
Yankees Twins Game 1, 2004 playoffs.
That's amazing.
Yep.
That's amazing. Dude, thank you so much for coming, guys.
This is
Anthony Donahue. This is the TVT News Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.